Yeah, yeah, yeah. Bad Bunny,
Hi, everyone. We'll wait a minute to get started, and then we will get going. In the meantime, enjoy my Bad Bunny Yoko Bre. Es uno de mis favoritos.
Estoy burlado, me tienen que soportar. Que hoy cobré, yo mismo lo voy a explotar. El precio ni voy a preguntar. Fumando en la Gucci, nadie lo va a notar. Estoy burlado, me tienen que soportar. Sigo metiendo pila que se les va a botar. Sigo en el saque, yo no pienso rotar. Los reales con una mano lo puedo contar. Tengo a los falsos en la mira, es cuestión de apretar. Rey de ti me corría play. Se cayeron con el stay. Se lejos solo en everyday. Y mírame cabrón, ahora soy rey. Yo en Miami soy Lebron con el 6. Casano en PR para el 96. No entiendo que tú dices what do you say.
All right. So Bad Bunny is one of my favorites, so I have to use him whenever I can. But I want to go ahead and make sure we use our full times. So welcome in. This is for Fiveable, and we are starting with the conversation task for AP Spanish Language and Culture. Let's get started. Okay, so just a heads up that this is being recorded. So if you want to change your name or anything so that when you're sending in a question into the chat, please go ahead and do so now. All right, I'll kick us off in the chat too. Starting us off saying hola. All right, awesome. And just a reminder that follow us on all of our forms of social media. If you want the quickest updates about CRAMs, quick tips about how to study, you can find us on Twitter, Insta, YouTube, whatever works best for you at our handle @ThinkFiveable. All right, so a quick introduction for me. Who am I? My name is Britt, but all my students call me Profe. You can call me either. I first started teaching through Teach for America, and I taught in North Carolina for a couple of years. And then I moved to Chicago, and I've been here for 8 years teaching AP Spanish, as well as Spanish 1 and ESL. But I'm originally from Michigan, went to the University of Michigan, so go blue. I love to travel, and I love taking students with me to travel. So that's just a little bit about me. I know you can't see my face right now, but I hope you can see it on the screen. Okay. And then I want to give some special love to my TA, Ciel. He's in the chat, so if you have any questions, he'll be responding. He is a super estrella because he got a 5 on the AP Spanish test in 8th grade. So he's like mega super listo y inteligente. So if you need anything in the chat, he's there saying hola. And you can also find both of us on Slack and on Discord. If you have specific questions, want us to look anything over, we are 100% here for you. So cool. All right, I'm going to launch now a quick poll. So how are we feeling about the speaking portion of the AP exam? Okay. Are we feeling ansioso, más o menos, or I would pay $100 to not have to take this section? Go ahead and respond in the chat or in the poll. Okay. Nice. So it's looking like we're feeling anxious. I mean, I get that. The speaking portion is a lot. So let's jump right into it. Don't want to waste any time. This is what we're going to, oops, hold on. Let me hide that poll now. Cool. This is what we're going to work on today. I'm going to go over the instructions, what I call pro tips, and a checklist to make sure you feel super prepared, some sample prompts, and leave any time for you for questions and answers. Okay. So here are the instructions that you're going to see when you take this portion of the test. You will participate in a conversation. First, you will have 1 minute to read a preview of the conversation, including an outline of each turn in the conversation. Afterward, the conversation will begin following the outline. Each time it is your turn to speak, you will have 20 seconds to record your response. You should participate in the conversation as fully and as appropriately as possible. Okay? So the spark notes of this is you should talk for the whole 20 seconds. You absolutely should read the outline and figure out what it is it's asking you to say, and just be as detailed as you possibly can. So let's go over that a little bit more concretely. Okay, so this is my checklist. The 4 main things you need to do to pass this section. 1, talk for the entire 20 seconds. 2, respond to the prompt appropriately. 3, use varied vocab and grammar tenses. And then 4, if you make a mistake, don't sweat. You can self-correct. So I'm going to go through each of these now, and then we'll look at some samples. Okay, this is huge. So pro tip number 1, make sure that you talk for the entire 20 seconds, okay? Habla, habla, habla. It is better to repeat yourself than to stop early. So if you feel like, okay, I already answered this question, so I don't need to talk anymore, doesn't work like that. You should just keep going, going, going until you hear the beep. And if you start talking over the beep because it interrupted you mid-sentence, that's no worries. Just stop wherever you're at in the sentence and listen to whatever is the conversation that's coming up next. Okay. Okay. Pro tip number 2. This is perhaps the most important. You want to make sure you respond to the prompt appropriately. So in the, what I call esquema, in the outline, it tells you exactly what it wants you to do to respond, okay? You must make sure that you read that prompt fully. I recommend annotating it so that you understand what it's asking of you. Because if you do not respond appropriately, unfortunately, you get points taken off, okay? So if you're looking at my examples right now in the blue, where it says, salúdalo y responde a la pregunta. If you just say like, hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? You didn't respond to the question, so I have to take off some points, right? These are all examples of things you'll see in the outline of the esquema, right? So expresa tu opinión, responde y ofrécele algunas sugerencias, responde afirmativamente y explícale por qué es buena idea, y también reacciona y despídete. Okay. It is always going to ask you to say hello, salúdalo, and it is also going to ask you always to say goodbye, despídete. Okay. So prepare for those interactions when you are completing the conversation. Okay. Make sure that you're reading it though. So when it says here, ofrécele algunas sugerencias, it wants you to offer a couple suggestions. So make sure that you are reading these prompts, annotating it, and understanding it. Let's look at an example. Okay. So this sample prompt is from AP Spanish, preparing for the language and culture exam, which I'm going to link in the chat once we get to some more examples, right? But for example, this is with Cecilia and tú. So if you'll notice, the first thing it wants you to do is say hello, salúdala, and explain why you've called. Next, it wants you to give a suggestion and explain why you liked it, whatever it is that the suggestion is that she's asking. Third, dale un resumen y responde a la pregunta. Give her a summary and respond to the question. So it's telling you she's going to ask you a question. You need to be prepared to answer it, right? Here, it doesn't tell you if you need to respond to it positively or negatively, but sometimes it does. Sometimes it will say like, responde afirmativamente, respond positively, or negativamente, respond negatively. But here, it doesn't say specifically, so you're good to go. Next, responde a la pregunta con detalles. This part, con detalles, is where I'm circling back to my pro tip number 1. You need to talk that full 20 seconds. Doesn't matter if you repeat yourself. It's more important that you just get your message out there and you speak the whole time. And then at the end, ofrécele tu ayuda y despídete, right? So once again, you're going to make sure you say goodbye, but it should not just be like, oh, gracias y bueno, pues adios. Then you're waiting for the tone. It's awkward. People will take off points. So just make sure that you're filling in that space, okay? Overall, you will always have to respond 5 times, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You will always speak 5 times for 20 seconds. Okay, before I move on to my next tip, any questions? Ciara, let me know because, we're just chilling here. So if any point you have any questions, just put it in the chat and I'll let you know. Okay, cool. Then we'll move on to pro tip. Oops, I forgot I had these pop-ins. So yeah, just wanted to remind you that you're always going to have to say hello and you're always going to have to say goodbye. I see your question, Sierra. What is the best way to learn grammar tenses if you don't know enough? So question in the chat. What's the best way to learn grammar tenses if you don't know enough? I don't have a teacher this year. I'm not as prepared as I should be. My favorite website is called conjuguemos.com. I just put it in the chat. It's a free website where you can select a different language and you can choose a different verb tense. So if you're like, I know I'm like really crummy at present perfect, like he hablado, has comido, han caminando, I need that extra practice. It's kind of like the kill and drill. Is that the right way of saying it? I don't remember. Rehearsals with grammar because it plugs in a verb and a subject and it just they're drills. You just keep going through and through until you can get a lot of practice with grammar. So I would really recommend starting there. You can do it for as many, you can play games, but I think the easiest way is just to practice with the drills. So at the end of this, remind me and I'll show you an example of Conjuguemos because I think it's really helpful. Okay, this leads into what you just asked, Sarah. Pro tip 3 is try to drop as many different types of conjugated verbs that you can. Instead of only talking in the present tense, try and throw in there the preterite, the subjunctive, just show off your Spanish skills. You know how to do that. Just make sure that you also remember to have fun and be silly. This is a part of the test where it's very informal. Okay, you're talking with a friend on the phone. So you can say like, oye, Carlos, ¿cómo está? Tanto tiempo. Like, you want to make sure you're having a fun with it. Just so long as you're responding to the prompts, it's all good. And then my last tip, if you make a mistake, self-correct. Okay, it's not a big deal if you make a mistake. I have a lot of students that are like, oh my gosh, I totally fudged up that last part and I just don't know, I'm stressing and now I can't, I'm just gonna stop talking for the rest of this. I'm like, no, that's the worst thing you can do. If you make a mistake, just fix it in the moment. If you say cuando yo tengo 7 años and you're like, oh, cuando yo tenía 7 años, if you make that quick correction, there's no points taken off. But do not speak any Spanglish, right? There will definitely be points taken off. If you forget a word and you just say it in English, don't do that. Just try your best to say it a different way in Spanish, talk around the word. That's what I recommend to my students. So again, if you make a mistake, don't sweat it. It's not the end of the world. We won't even necessarily take off points for that, so long as you're the fix that you make is easily understandable. Okay. So let's do some quick checks for understanding to make sure that you were listening to me. So I'm going to open the first poll. How long should you speak for when it's your turn? Is it 10, 15, 20, or 25 segundos? How long should you speak for when it's your turn? Go ahead and respond. Awesome. Yes. Correcto. 20 seconds. You should speak for the whole 20 seconds. All right, one more. On a whole, the conversation task is informal, meaning you can use tú, or formal. You should use usted. Go ahead and vote. Yes, excellent. So it's informal. You're talking with a friend. It's totally okay to use tú the entire time. You do not need to use usted at any point. This is 100% a time where you can be more silly, so long as you're responding to the prompts and using tú. Just relájate un poco, ¿ya? Porque eso es una conversación con un amigo. So relájate. Relax. You're going to be just fine. Okay, and then I'll do another poll right now. Oops, let me hide this puppy. Okay. It's okay to make a mistake while speaking so long as you correct it to the best of your ability. Is that cierto or falso? Cierto or falso? Good, cierto. Again, I just want to kind of build up your confidence here a little bit. We're not expecting perfection as AP readers. We are just expecting a task to be completed well, okay? We don't expect every single student to be a native speaker and coming in and killing it. You know, it's all right if you stumble, if you forget a word, if you mispronounce something, do not worry. Okay. So let's look at some sample conversation prompts, okay? I see you're in the chat, Sierra asked, so it isn't an interview? No, it is not an interview. It's always a conversation with a friend. Right? Always a conversation. You can think maybe the email task is more like an interview, because for the email, you're usually responding about an opportunity to travel somewhere or fulfill some type of scholarship opportunity. So I'm just going to put that in the chat so it's crystal clear. And the email, it's formal. You should use usted. And then for the conversation, it's informal. You should use tú, because you're talking with a friend. Just want to make sure that's clear. Okay, I'm going to quickly, just for a moment, exit out of my PowerPoint, just because I want to shout out this book real quick and put the link in the chat. This is the book I use in my AP Spanish class. If you're interested, I just think it does a really good job with, let me go back to presenting, a really good job with all the different prompts. So that's the book I recommend to my students, but there's tons of books out there. They're all very similar. You can't really go wrong. But let's look at some examples from there. Okay. So this is my first example, right? It gives you a minute to read the introduction, right? Always read this part right here, la introducción, because it tells you what you're going to need to do and really sets the stage, okay? So it says, recibes un mensaje telefónico de tu amigo Ricardo, quien te pide que lo llames por teléfono. Escucha el mensaje. Luego vas a participar en una conversación con Ricardo porque él quiere contarte algo sobre sus amigos Ignacio y Gloria. Okay. So this one is slightly different in that it's telling you get a voicemail from Ricardo who's asking that you should call him back on the phone. Listen to his message. Then you're going to participate in a conversation with Ricardo because he wants to tell you something about your friends, Ignacio and Gloria. Okay. So before I actually have the audio for this and I'm going to play it as an example. But before we do that, let's go back to the chat. And I want to see if there's any questions about vocabulary here. If you have any questions about vocabulary. Okay, so if there's no questions on vocab, the first thing I would tell you to do is immediately circle the 2 prompts. All right, there's 5 of them. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make sure you understand exactly what it's asking you to do. So for the first one, it says, salúdalo y dile por qué no respondiste cuando él te llamó. Say hi to him and tell him why you did not respond when he called you. Because remember, in the prompt, it tells me that I'm going to listen to a voicemail from him. And I have to then tell him why I didn't pick up when he called me. Right? The second one, reacciona y pídele detalles. React and ask details. Third, reacciona y aconsejalo. So react and then give your advice to him. Fourth, reacciona y sugiere algo apropiado. React and suggest something that's appropriate. And then lastly, termina la conversación y despídete. Finish the conversation and say goodbye. Okay? So without knowing what it is that's going to happen with with Ignacio and Gloria, I have a background and a schema, an outline of where I need to take this conversation. Okay. I'm now going to play the audio and I am going to respond as if I am a student to give you an example of what a 5 would look like. Okay. What I want you to do is keep in mind the checklist that I told you about. Did I make a mistake and did I self-correct it? Did I talk for the full 20 seconds? And did I respond to the prompts appropriately? Right? Also, did I make sure to try and use different grammar tenses? Okay. We're going to start now.
En este momento va a comenzar el mensaje telefónico. Escucha el mensaje.
Hola, te habla Ricardo y te tengo un gran chisme. Llámame en cuanto puedas. Sé que te encantan los chismes. Hasta luego.
En este momento va a comenzar la conversación. Ahora presiona el botón Record.
¿Aló?
Hola, Ricardo, soy Brittany. Bueno, pues lo siento que yo no respondí cuando me llamaste. Yo estaba cocinando por mi abuela porque es su cumpleaños. Entonces, yo estaba preparando un almuerzo y una comida para ella. Pero dime, ¿qué pasó? Porque sé que...
No te preocupes. Oye, me acaban de decir que Ignacio y Gloria se han peleado. Ya no son novios. Parece ser que a la madre de Gloria no le gusta Ignacio y no quiere que ella salga más con él. ¿Te imaginas?
Ay, Dios mío, yo no puedo creer eso. Ignacio y Gloria, pero ellos son perfectos. Siempre han sido mis goals para tener una relación, pero ¿cómo sabes eso? ¿Quién dijo? Ignacio ya te ha llamado para explicarle los detalles.
Es que para la madre de Gloria nadie es lo suficientemente bueno para salir con su hija. Ella es demasiado exigente. ¿Piensas que debo llamar a Ignacio para ofrecerle apoyo?
Bueno, pues yo he escuchado eso de la madre de Gloria también, pero qué pena por Ignacio que su relación tuvo que romper a causa de eso. Pero sí, yo creo que sería bien si hacemos algo por Ignacio para animarle un poquito, porque es una decisión.
Bueno, tienes razón. Estoy seguro de que él está muy triste. Estaba locamente enamorado de ella. ¿Habrá algo que podamos hacer por él?
Pues claro, si fuera mí o si fuera yo, lo que yo haría es hacer una actividad que puede limpiar mi mente. Entonces, tal vez nosotros vamos a ver una película en el cine o ir a caminar en el aire fresca, algo que podemos hacer que.
Excelente idea. Nos vemos entonces. Espero que podamos levantarle el ánimo al pobre Ignacio.
Bueno, pues yo espero lo mismo porque me siento muy mal que eso ha pasado a él, pero creo que sería bien si hicimos algo, tal vez podemos hacerlo el sábado o el domingo, porque yo no tengo planes este fin de semana. So, te voy a llamar, espero que te encuentres bien y hablaremos de lo que podemos hacer.
End of actividad 7.
Okay. So, I hope you enjoyed my example. Before I move on, I just want to give some time in the chat for any questions about how I completed that and things you're unsure about. Any questions about that example? Okay, great question in the chat. How can I practice this without someone else who knows Spanish? I think a great way to practice, I have a couple of responses, and I'm going to put them in the chat as well. But the first one is to buy a review book with the CD recording, okay? Because the CD will act as if for this part, the friend in the conversation. So you can kind of practice back and forth with the computer. I know it's awkward, but it's really the best way so that you feel like super prepared and can have those conversations, right? The other thing I would recommend is for number 2, just practice speaking in 20-second intervals on your phone about random topics. Okay. So for example, as a teacher, what I like to do is I will put up on the screen a picture of a bunny in a field, right? And then I'll be like, okay, talk about this bunny for 20 seconds. And students just have to be like, bueno, okay, yo veo un conejo que está en el césped, el conejo es blanco y tiene ojos muy grandes y tal vez el conejo blah, 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 blah. And it just helps your brain get used to talking on your feet quickly for 20 seconds, okay? You can record yourself on your phone with like a countdown. I think that can be really helpful as well, right? And then the last one is practice with us on Discord and Slack. We are always around. We can definitely help you out if you have any questions. There's also language clusters in Fileable, which is when a group of students all get together and practice speaking. So if you are interested in like getting some help from other people that are also learning the language and also wanting some additional practice, I recommend logging on to Discord and following the channel that is called Language Clusters, because we have events with a bunch of different students getting together and just practicing the language so that they feel better prepared for the test, and also just so that they get extra practice in general. Good question. Let me know if there are any other questions before I move on to the next example. Also, Hasiel, do you have any other recommendations for how to practice this part with someone who doesn't speak Spanish? You can put it in the chat too. Okay, let's look at another example. This is activity 9, all right? It's same book, but this is just another example. So it says, Amanda es reportera del periódico escolar. Vas a participar en una entrevista con ella porque tú quieres ser presidente o presidenta del consejo estudiantil. I wanted to put this example in here just to, again, reaffirm that you should always use to. So even though for this one, it says you're participating in an interview because you want to be student council president. Amanda and you are still the same age. She works at the school newspaper. So even though it's like quote unquote an interview, don't get tripped up. You should still be using to for all of these, because just think about it as if you're like talking to a friend at high school, in your high school, right? So again, just want to run through these examples. You have 5 chances to speak. It's for this one, an interview is starting. You respond with details. Amanda keeps asking you about the interview. You respond and give some suggestions or examples. She asks you another question. You suggest some ideas. Then you continue the conversation and you respond to her question with details, right? So you should show, and then lastly, explain to her what it is that you're going to do, right? Any questions on vocabulary for this one? Yeah, and Hasiel has some great ideas in the chat. He also said, if you want some extra help with the conversation, you can watch Spanish TV and try to react or predict the dialogue in the show or movie. And then you can see how similar it is to what you said. It's a great tip as well. Okay, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to practice this. I'm going to run the whole audio for you, and I'm not going to speak. So this is really just a practice for you at home. You can do it as many times as you want so that you feel comfortable with this section. So my expectation right now is that you are going to practice as if you are taking the test, and you are going to respond to Amanda about why you want to be student council president. So give me a second.
Actividad número
to pull up the audio.
9. Es la introducción.
Give me a second to get to the right spot. Okay, so when it's your turn to talk, I hope that you at home are completing
En
this
este
practice.
momento va a comenzar la conversación. Ahora presiona el botón Record.
Gracias por aceptar nuestra invitación para hacer esta entrevista. Me gustaría que les explicaras a los estudiantes la razón principal por la que quieres ser presidente del Consejo Estudiantil. Estoy segura de que también has pensado en algunos de los problemas que tenemos aquí en la escuela. En tu opinión, ¿cuál es el problema más serio? ¿Qué sugerencias tienes para mejorar la situación? Como sabes, muchos estudiantes no se molestaron en votar en las últimas elecciones escolares. ¿Qué les dirías a esos estudiantes? Ahora para terminar, ¿qué piensas hacer desde hoy hasta el día de las elecciones para asegurar tu victoria? Muchas gracias por la entrevista. Te deseo mucho éxito.
End of actividad 9.
Okay, awesome. So if you want to do that one as many times as you want, just click pause, rewind it once you get this final recording. And I really recommend doing it as many times so that you feel as comfortable as you possibly can. I'm going to give you the opportunity to practice one more time. Okay, so this is actividad 10, and this is with your friend Ángel. So vas a participar en una conversación con él porque quiere comprarse una tableta, pero no tiene dinero. These conversations crack me up. So again, like this is with your friend, he wants to buy a tablet, but he doesn't have any money. So be silly with this. You can make as many jokes as you want so long as you're responding to the prompt. Like just make sure you're reading where it says to. You're going to speak 5 times. You fill those 20 seconds and you try and drop in as many different types of tenses as you can. So I'm going to press play now on this audio so you can get an additional practice at home.
Actividad número 10.
Okay.
Tienes 1 minuto para leer las instrucciones de esta actividad.
All right, let me skip through that part. So you would always have a minute to read the instructions, but I always recommend skipping reading the instructions because they never change and you already know the expectations for what the task is asking of you. You should immediately skip to the introduction and start annotating where to is. Don't waste time reading the instructions. Spend your whole time annotating this so you know exactly what to say when it's your turn. Okay. So let's get ready for your conversación with Ángel about his desire for a tablet. Buena suerte.
En este momento va a comenzar la conversación. Ahora presiona el botón Record.
Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Sabes? Estoy pensando en comprar una tableta. Creo que sería muy útil. ¿Qué piensas? El problema es que no tengo suficiente dinero. Solo tengo la mitad de lo que cuesta. No sé cómo conseguir el resto del dinero. Supongo que debería conseguir trabajo, pero a mi edad y sin experiencia, ¿dónde puedo trabajar? Buena idea. Oye, ¿qué tal si tú y yo solicitamos el mismo trabajo? Estoy completamente de acuerdo contigo. Me muero por ganar dinero y comprarme una tableta. Bueno, nos vemos más tarde y así hacemos planes para buscar un puesto de trabajo.
End of actividad 10.
Okay, awesome. So I hope that was good for you to get some extra practice in. You can always go back to those and complete it as many times as you want, just to get an extra feel for what it's like speaking in that 20 seconds and with the tone. And again, if you want some additional help, if you buy the digital edition of this book, you can get the audio recordings and it's really helpful. That's really true of any AP review book if you're really wanting that extra practice. Okay, so I'll launch some more polls just to make sure that we have understood the main important things to pass this portion of the test. So if you feel like you've answered the prompt, you can stop talking. Is that cierto or falso? Good. Yes, that would be falso. Even if you feel like you answered the prompt, make sure you talk the whole time. Talk the whole time. Okay. Next, how many turns do you have to respond in the conversation? 20, 3, 4, or 5? How many turns do you have? Excelente. Tienes 5. 5 times to speak and do an excellent job. Okay, and lastly, I put this one in español. That's my last poll. ¿Para qué sirve el esquema de la conversación? ¿Para decirte exactamente de qué trata la conversación? ¿Para guiar tus... Oops, I meant to hide this other one. And let me show you this one. ¿Para qué sirve el esquema de la conversación? ¿Para decirte exactamente de qué trata la conversación? ¿Para guiar tus respuestas durante la conversación? ¿O para detallar las instrucciones de la conversación? Good. Yes. The correct answer is to guide your answers during the conversation. Nice work, everybody. So just make sure you're always going back to that and making sure you understand exactamente lo que está pidiéndote. If you're responding affirmatively, negatively, giving suggestions, etc. Okay. Oops, let me hide this poll one last time. All right, this last, for the last portion of this review session, I got a lot of questions last time asking about like, how do I improve my reading, writing, listening, and speaking? So I made this review document for you. If you take a picture of the QR code, it will bring up my document. So I'm going to actually quit out of my PowerPoint for a minute. Actually, I guess I'm not going to because then you can't see my closed captions. Okay, and I'm just going to quickly go over all 4 of these buckets for how to improve your reading, listening, writing, and speaking. The first thing is reading. I think personally this is the best way to improve your Spanish skills and build your vocab and confidence, okay? What I always recommend to students is that they read a book they're already familiar with. So if you've already read Harry Potter or Twilight or The Hunger Games, those books are a little bit more childish in nature, so they are easier to read and to fully comprehend what's going on. And then it really helps you with sentence structure, grammar, vocab. I really recommend just going to Amazon and buying the first Harry Potter in Spanish. You will be shocked at how much your Spanish will improve from that alone, okay? If you're someone who really likes the news, you can read news ELA articles in Spanish and you can scale those. So sometimes it'll tell you like 4th grade level, 8th grade level, 10th grade level to your comfort level. So if you're feeling anxious at first, you can start maybe at a middle school level and then scale that up. So you're eventually reading articles in Spanish, right? They also have reading comprehension quizzes at the end. They're excellent. I really recommend those. And then lastly, the most fun one, definitely watch Netflix shows and read the subtitles. So what I do personally all the time is I will watch a show in Netflix in Spanish, but I still put on the subtitles in Spanish because sometimes they're talking so fast. I'm not a native speaker. I can get lost. So that really helps me. And these are 3 that I really like: Velvet, La Casa de las Flores, and Elite. But I want to put in the chat, oh, nice, Sierra, that you're reading Hunger Games in Spanish. Good work. Hasiel, do you have any more Netflix recommendations? Will you put it in the chat? Netflix recs in Spanish, let me know, and I'll read them off. Okay. So these Netflix recommendations are also, I put them in this listening portion because you're practicing listening to people speak. I mean, that's just super great for helping your comprehension and making sure that you don't feel stressed out on the AP portion when they start a listening portion, okay? But the most important, the most helpful thing I think for listening is listening to podcasts. If you take a picture of the QR code, this Google Doc will pop up and all of these are hyperlinked with where to find these podcasts at. Mi favorito personal is Radio Ambulante. They have stories about everything, like anything under the sun. That's really, really interesting. They're anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes, and they are really good practice for listening and building up your Spanish stamina. I also really like Nomadas. It's all about different places that this guy who runs the podcast has traveled, and he just talks about them. So if you're a big travel person and want to learn about another city, I recommend that one. And then I know a lot of you guys are serial killer obsessed. I know all my students always love all the different crime documentaries. So if that is you, I did put a podcast in there called Asesinos Seriales, which I don't recommend if you have a weak stomach, but it is really helpful if you want to follow a storyline and practice your Spanish listening, okay? And then at the bottom, I have writing and speaking. These ones are definitely harder because you're doing them on your own, and usually it works much better when you're working with a friend or a partner that can help you with feedback, okay? But for writing, I recommend starting a journal. This will help with, if you read it, I think I copied and pasted this, but this just helps you feel like you can master writing more verb tenses. It makes you realize where you may need some extra review. You can also write about things you're passionate about. So you can just write about your hobbies, your families or friends, your goals and plans. And then lastly, just ask us for feedback. So make sure that you find this on Discord or Slack. Same thing with speaking. So Ciara said she's reading The Hunger Games right now. Practice reading the book out loud, okay? So reading it out loud to yourself. It feels silly, but it's really helpful with your pronunciation and then your overall confidence, because if you're reading out loud to yourself, 3 to 5 chapters a day, your Spanish is going to get better. I definitely guarantee that, because you're going to feel more confident. You're not going to stumble so much over trickier words. You'll feel better. And then lastly, just, practice the conversation and the comparación cultural on voice memos and listen back to them, see where you might need some extra help, and go from there. Yeah, and Ciel just said in the chat, any documentaries about Latin America, Las Crónicas del Taco, I watched that too on Netflix, or America shows that have been any movie dubbed in Spanish. So if you're trying to cram, no matter what you're watching, whether it's in English or in Spanish, you should be having Spanish subtitles on. It will really help your brain get in the right mindset. Okay, so really that's it from me. I want to make sure I leave enough time for any questions about anything before I close this out. And I will go over Conjuguemos, but if there's any other questions, now is the time to ask. Okay. I'm going to then show you a little bit more about Conjuguemos. So if you want some extra help with vocab, this can be really helpful. So it looks like this. If you want, you can create an account, but you don't need to. I don't think I have one. So I'm just going to click use without account. Okay. Now, there's all of these different types of tenses and verbs that you can practice. Okay. So I'm going to practice, maybe I need some help with the future tense. And I can work on the future tense. Or maybe I need help with, present progressive, like estoy caminando, estás hablando, etc. You can choose the irregular ones, so ones that are funky, or the normal ones. And it will generate all of them. You can also practice tú commands, usted commands, whatever. So it really has a lot of different things of what this looks like. But let's practice for right now. I'm going to do preterite tense. Where is it? All verbs. Okay. Now I'm going to choose graded practice. Okay. And it's going to set me a timer of 5 minutes. You can change that if you want. But let's see how good of a job I do. Okay, so you can see here it says free dot and press star. So you have to conjugate it, and I chose the preterite tense. Preterite tense. So all I do is type in my box, presto. I got it right. Okay. If it needs, this would be fueron. If it needs an accent or you get it wrong, it will tell you, right? So I said pegaron, which is what it would be if it was plural, right? So you can click check, oops. Right, now if you need to add an accent, you just click this little button, add accent, check, you're good. So this one, comprendió, I need to add an accent. If you get confused or you're not sure, there's also, you can click the hint box and it will show you all of the verbs. So if you're like, I don't even know what this means, comprender means to understand. And now I have all of my verbs here. So I know exactly how to conjugate it, right? Oh, shoot, I forgot that this one was irregular. This is produjeron. So it just helps you a lot too if you need some extra review with all of these funky verbs in Spanish. Again, you can always click hints and you'll be like, oh yeah, this means to produce. I'm practicing the preterite. It's irregular, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great question in the chat. How important are accents on the test? Accents are important, but not as much as your teacher makes you think that they are. So it breaks my heart to say this, as I always yell at my students about accents, but as AP readers, it's not super duper important. Spelling is actually more important, and including different grammar tenses is more important. So if you mess up a couple of accents on the test, it's really not the end of the world. You can still get a 5. Now, obviously, if you mess up every single accent and every single verb and every single word, it's going to be problematic. But if you make a couple of mistakes with accents on the test, it's not a huge part of the rubric, so don't stress as much about that. They are important, but they don't really tend to be something that's make or break. Okay, I'm going to go back to this now that we've seen what conjuguemos. Any other questions? And it can be about the conversation part or about anything regarding the test at all. Okay, well, in that case, as always, you can keep this conversation going in Discord. If you want to find me because you have a specific question, you can always send me a chat. I'm there. Would love to help you out. Like I said, I'm going to stop sharing so you guys can all see my face so I don't become a zombie. Okay, here I am. Hi, guys. So if you have any questions, you want extra help, you want me to look over an assignment for you, I'm more than happy to do so. I have lots of experience, so I would love to help you guys on the test. Okay, one last question coming in. How can I get faster at responding? Practice. I mean, really, you have to practice, even if you are by yourself in your room, it's kind of awkward, like you feel uncomfortable talking to a computer. Let me switch this so you can see my face a little better. That's fine. It doesn't matter. Just get as much practice as you can. Also, you don't have to speak super duper fast to get a 5. You really don't. You can get a 5 hablando así. Si yo respondo a todas las respuestas y yo no estoy hablando muy rápido, está bien porque yo estoy comunicando lo que necesito comunicar. Right? You don't need to be a native speaker, like going super fast. If you are, great, but that's not 100% needed to get a 5. Okay, any last questions? All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and close this out then. I hope to see you guys at my other CRAM sessions coming up, both for the comparación cultural, the other speaking portion, and the ensayo persuasivo. So thank you so much for coming. I hope you guys have a super great, phenomenal AP season. Remember, si se puede, you can always do it. So just have that confidence. Practica, practica, practica. Watch your shows on Netflix with the subtitles and have an awesome weekend. I'll see you guys later. Adios.